Welcome back. Okay. CELTA trainer and training journey. Week number 2, we had 2 sessions. So on Tuesday morning, we had the input session, which consisted of our second session on lesson planning, which was more of a focus on language analysis and CCQs, that type of stuff. Because last week we looked into the staging the staging and aims. And so we focus more on language analysis and CCQs. And also the second session was on presenting new language via a text. Here's what happened though, because my main course tutor does what he wants. He flipped them and he reversed the order. And so what he did was he started with presenting a new language via text, and he did that through a demo lesson. So he gave actually 2 consecutive lessons. One was a reading lesson. The other one was a grammar lesson. And he did like micro teaching of the teacher group. And so what they were tasked to do was to watch his session and actually participate. They were the students, and he went through the session, and it was quite quick. He did it in, I would say, an hour, because the language that he was introducing and the skills and stuff were obviously lower than the teacher's proficiency levels. So they were able to go through the activities quite quickly, and it was just a demo lesson for them to see the stages and stuff. And then after that, they had time for reflection on what was the focus of the lessons, where the division was between the 2 lessons, to be able to say, okay, well, this one is a system, this one is a skill. And then also, their task was to reverse engineer the lesson plans, which I thought was great. Really interesting. So they had to figure it out. So they were given some templates, and they were instructed to take notes throughout the lesson of what they were doing and etc. The activities, so that when they were separated into groups, one group took the reading lesson, one group took the grammar lesson, and they had to reverse engineer the lesson plan based on their observations. So they worked in groups, and then they shared the skills and system lessons with each other, the lesson plans, and they focused on developing the lesson aim, the sub aims. They worked on the stages, stage aims, procedures, and interaction patterns. So kind of that main body part of the lesson plan for CELTA. Then we went to what was supposed to be the first session, but it was the second, which was lesson planning and looking at language analysis. So after they had made the stages and pretty much filled out a huge chunk of the lesson plan, the second part was looking at language analysis. So we introduced those ideas, clarified what, meaning, form, pronunciation, what we're looking for there, gave them some resources, and then they were off in their groups again, working on the same demo lesson to reverse engineer and look back. So they had a couple of things that they had to analyze. Obviously, one was a grammar structure, and the other one was a couple lexical items. And so they did MPF in their groups, and then they started working on CCQs, concept check questions, if you don't know what those are. It's prepared questions that you can ask students in order to check to make sure they understand the concepts. And what else were they doing? Oh, and a couple of people had time, so they started working on anticipated problems. So they were predicting what issues the students might have and how to solve those issues, whether it be for meaning, form, or pronunciation. So that was the input session on Tuesday morning. I think it was nice because on Thursday we had non-assessed teaching practice. So we had 4 teachers teaching. 2 were teaching the lower level group, and 2 were teaching the higher level group. And it gave them a little bit of structure for them to feel a bit more comfortable, kind of following like the Cambridge style lesson plans and expectations there. So on Thursday, I was very pleasantly surprised watching two lessons that were extremely successful, and the teachers didn't have any major problems. They were obviously anxious because it's nerve-wracking to have people watching you, especially when you have two tutors and three other people watching your lesson. So, um, yeah, people get anxious, but they did quite well, and they were able to also afterwards interview the students that they would be teaching for the first half of the course. So they were in breakout rooms and had a chance to talk to the students and see what they like, what they dislike, some, strengths and weaknesses that they might have with the language, and just kind of get to know them, to get a general feel of what they're like, so they're able to prepare lessons that are engaging and entertaining. Entertaining sometimes. Engaging. We'll just say engaging. Yes, and then we had some informal feedback from myself and from the main course tutor. We were in breakout rooms, gave suggestions here and there. I tried to give tips that helped me during my CELTA course because if y'all don't know me by now, I am quite an anxious person. So I would get nervous. I get nervous for everything. But I would get quite nervous. And so what I would do was try to script some things for myself, especially like instructions. I have a podcast and I make videos on YouTube, and I'm just kind of a ridiculous person. I talk a lot, especially when I get anxious. I talk even more, and I talk very quickly. So it's something that I had to work on. So one of the things that helped me was just kind of having the instructions there, so I wasn't repeating myself over and over again, because I will tend to do that. So I would write the instructions, write some of the CCQs and stuff. So I would have them there, and it would just make me feel better. Even if I didn't use them, it was there. It also helped my timing a little bit, because obviously you don't want to be chattering away when you have 45-minute lessons, because 45-minute lessons are quite short. So you have to be very, very concise. So that was one of the tips that I gave the teachers. Maybe writing some instructions down, possibly some things that can be scripted and right there, so you don't have to think about it. And it's just an easy model to follow until you get less anxious, if that's possible during this process, because I think being assessed, you're just always a little bit anxious. And one of the other issues that came up was time management. So tips for time management that I have is be quite realistic. These teachers are doing this course online, and online, the transitions online and in person are a little bit different. So if you haven't taught online, we just went through a pandemic, so I'm assuming most people had at least one online class or one online teaching experience, or possibly learning experience. Transitioning online always takes longer. It takes a bit for people to go in and out of breakout rooms. It takes people a little bit to open up the documents. It takes people a little. It's not as quick as teaching face to face. So you have to kind of accommodate for that. That there is going to be this transition time. That there is going to be people that are a little bit slower or have issues with technology. So in terms of time management, allow a little bit of buffer time to do those transitions between your stages, between interaction patterns that you have. And also be realistic about the quantity of things that you want people to do in a specific amount of time. Let me give you an example. So if you're sending people off into breakout rooms to discuss questions, and you give them 5 minutes because they have speaking practice, whatever, and you give them 7 questions, odds are they're not going to get through all the questions. And then they're going to come back and they'll say, teacher, we didn't finish. And then it's going to be a whole discussion. That's okay if you didn't finish. Let's focus on the one that, okay. So be careful about the amount of stuff that you expect them to do within the 5 minutes, because I mean, every single time my students that I've watched, observing, whenever they go into a breakout room, it's they say hi to each other, they ask each other how they're doing. Someone inevitably says, "What are we supposed to do? Are we doing this? Can you share your screen?" And then it takes like 2 or 3 more minutes for them to actually get started doing it. So, it's not as quick as teaching face to face. Knowing that, what you can do is kind of adapt your tasks and knowing, okay, well, if I'm going to give them 5 minutes, I'm going to give them maybe 2 or 3 questions to discuss. And then when they come back into the breakout or from the breakout rooms, then we can go through those. They can report on it or do whatever they need to do with it. So, yeah, time management, I think we just need to be a little bit more realistic that people online, for whatever reason, technology and how they feel, they're hanging out in their pajamas at home doing a class. So yeah, it's not as quick. So maybe we have to scale back. Not that it's not going to be a good lesson or that it's going to be rich and full of language. It's that we have to scale it down to make sure that the tasks are being completed, they have enough time, and they can actually really engage with the questions. So those were just 2 things that popped up this week after watching the first unassessed TPs. People getting very anxious and people having anxiety about time management. I think that's it. Oh, and then we went through lesson planning for the next week. So we had some assistant lesson planning time. The candidates worked together, gave each other suggestions. And I have to say, if you don't have a team, if you work independently like me, it is really important to bounce ideas off of each other, because as I was watching the teachers go back and forth and have these conversations, it was quite interesting to see that they were almost talking themselves into ideas or talking themselves out of ideas. So if they had this idea, they say, well, I was thinking of doing this, and they're like, but I don't think that's going to work. Just having a sounding board, it was interesting to see the interaction. I tried to keep my camera off and my mic off, and I just want them to work together to see what they can come up with. Obviously, I help when I can. But it's interesting that teachers have pretty good intuition about what's going to work and what's not going to work. And if you have a sounding board, especially someone who's really interested in you succeeding, like your peer, like they just want you genuinely to do well, they'll give you honest feedback. And it's great to have the honest feedback, especially before the lesson, because there was some really good discussions in the 2 groups that I was watching for their assisted lesson planning. I was really impressed. They were really truly trying to help each other, and they came up with some really awesome ideas. So I think the lessons are going to be that much better because they had that opportunity to brainstorm and kind of, get out of their head a little bit and interact with a person, to think through actually their stages and their lessons and the activities that they wanted to do and what they were trying to introduce. So definitely recommend finding friends, finding teaching friends that you trust and you can bounce some ideas off of them, especially if you're in this type of situation where you're being assessed. So, and I think that's it. Oh, one more thing. All of the candidates were extremely concerned about failing lessons in CELTA. As I am new, I am not going to speak too much about passing and failing and all of that good stuff because I can't give you too much information about that. Just from lack of experience, and I'm still working on making sure that I know the criteria inside and out before I speak about something. I don't want to sound like I know something. However, what I do know is that this program is for people who want to see progress, not perfection. If you are aimed to have perfect lessons, I guarantee you, first of all, you won't, because that doesn't exist. Perfect lessons don't exist. There's really good lessons, really successful lessons, but perfect lessons don't exist. And from my understanding so far in this process, if you're thinking of taking CELTA or if you're thinking of taking a training course for teacher certifications, think about it like this. The objective is for you to have a starting point, and by the end of the course, for you to actually show improvement, marked improvement. So if you make a mistake in your CELTA lesson, I'm not going to say I guarantee, but I'm going to say I'm 95% sure, 99% sure that one mistake in the delivery of a CELTA lesson is not going to fail you, because there's a whole range of things that we're looking at. So, did you prepare properly? If you didn't prepare properly, how can you prepare properly for the next time? If you delivered it, but you recognize that you delivered it in a way that wasn't quite successful, and in your reflection, you were able to identify that and suggest possible things that you were able to, could do better the next time, great. So making a mistake or saying something wrong, the candidates were really, really concerned about if they said something, or if they made a mistake, or if the timing was off of their lesson. That's those singular items. I'm going to say that I'm 95% sure that that's not going to fail you. So if you're thinking of taking a course like this, think about, you're trying to make progress. If you identify things that are weaknesses or that you don't do well, identify them, come up with a plan, figure out how you can make them better, and then move forward. Implement that plan. If your tutors give you suggestions and say, listen, I noticed that this might be an issue, so let's focus on this. And then your next lessons or your next assignments or whatever, try to do it this way. And you do. And it might be successful. It might be slightly more successful than before. That's fine. At least you're trying to implement positive changes to make progress. I think that is how people should start looking at doing CELTA, right? It's not check the box, passed, get the certificate, because that doesn't really mean anything. We're looking for you actually to become a better teacher. That's the whole idea, is that there's growth and there's progress. So if you come into the program with that idea that you just want to learn, you want to get better, you want to collaborate with people, you want to take suggestions and try them out and see if it improves your practice, that's great. So that's my suggestion. Don't be completely anxious as a trainee, a candidate, whatever, a CELTI, whatever you want to call yourself. We're looking for progress, not perfection. So take that with you as you go through the program, and just try to become better. That's it for me today. I am going to go. I have lots of reports to write, so I will be back next week with week 3, how it goes for CELTA Trainer and Training.